Okay, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Very good morning to all of you. So, can we start our lecture?
Sure, Doctor.
Okay, so good. All right, so as I mentioned last week, we will discuss about the second phase of our data science life cycle, which is data understanding. Okay, this is a phase 2 and a very important phase that we need to deal when we look into data science project. Okay, so before we go detail, just to remind you about the CRIPS DM data science life cycle, or we call it a framework or a methodology. So together there are 6 phases. Okay, so
Doctor,
last week, yeah,
Doctor, can you
Saruna?
record this media as well, Doctor?
Yeah, I recorded.
Thank you, Doctor.
Thank you. All right, so we have 6 phases. The first one is actually data understanding. So last week we do about data understanding, and then we have lab exercise related to data understanding that you need to prepare 2 pages report related to the process of data understanding. So I hope you done with the exercise, because later I will go through one by one and see what you share regarding the data understanding, because this part also very important to see clearly what you are doing actually. So you can see here when we do business understanding, we will look into what does the business needs, the objective, the all the detail about the data sources and everything. So we need to discuss clearly with the stakeholder, the subject matter expert, in order to get this answer for business need. Okay. So in some cases, when you do your data science project or any data related project, or specifically because you are AI student, you do some AI project that need some data. So it's actually fall under data science. So sometimes you just skip the process about business need because you are too focused on the modeling side. Okay, especially for AI student, because they are more focused on machine learning, to do classification, to do regression. But sometimes you need to go back and see what does the business need. So this is the solution to your project, the significance of your project. Then you can explain to the stakeholder, to other people about your project clearly. If not, you will go deeper into the technical part, and then sometimes you forgot about what is actually the business need. So go back and look again at your exercise. Make sure you do good, okay, and then you understand about the process, business understanding. So today we will go to the second phase, data understanding. So in this part, I already mentioned to you, it will take more than 70 to 80% for you to prepare on data understanding and data preparation. Most of your time, you will start in these 2 phases. So that's why this is very important. I hope I can have 2 weeks to discuss about data understandings, and then another 1 week for data preparations. Okay, so at least you can grasp the knowledge and you will try to understand about data understanding, because most of the, for example, for modeling, you learn most of the tools in machine learning, in AI, in fuzzy, in evolutions, in neural net. There are 5 different subjects that focus on modeling. Okay, together with image processing. Image processing, I think most of the topic is focused on model, how to develop your computer vision model. but not focus on the data itself. So you can see around 6 to 7 courses that you took in AI course related to modeling and evaluations. Okay, but we miss the data understanding and data preparation. Actually, we learn a little bit in statistic, but not too detailed, because the statistic, most of you learn formula maybe, but the first topic in statistic is related to the data understanding. But that part is sometimes we just have maybe 1 week, not enough time to discuss. Unless when I'm teaching statistic, that part will be a little bit longer. Okay. All right. So today, hopefully, we can discuss on data understanding. Okay. What uh, data do we have or we need? Okay. We just look into these two words, have and need. In some cases, we have the data, but in some cases, we need that data. So it depends. So you need to look into what data do we have or we need. So if we need to search for the data. If we have, so it's much easier. You just use the data. And you need to look into whether the data is clean or not. Okay, so this is the part that very important for you to go through. Okay, so data understanding, actually the main objective is to get familiar with data sources. Okay, so where are the data? Where do you get the data? Whether the data is come from IoT device, whether the data is come from meaning that human data collections, or the data is primary data, secondary data, and so many different sources of data. So this is very important. And then we look into the data quality, whether we have any issues regarding missing values, outliers, and many more. And then look at the data structure. Okay, data types, something very important, all about data, and then the data distributions. So this phase actually involve collecting, describing, exploring, and verifying the data that will be used for data science projects. So we want to avoid the concept of GIGO, meaning that garbage in, garbage out. So this part is very crucial. So this is the key aspect of the data understanding phase. Okay, so first objective, to get familiar with data source, quality, structure, and distributions. So what is the main task here? Gathering the data, describing data, exploring data, verifying data quality. So the deliverable, meaning that what is the expectation for this phase, is data requirement reports. Okay, data description report and data quality report. So every time you do your preparations of the data, before that you need to understand the data, so come up with the proper report to show your data understandings. And then in terms of the techniques, sometimes we do data profiling, visualization, sampling, and cleaning. And then finally, the output is data inventory, data quality assessment, and any data issues. Okay, so you can see that this part is really huge into the data activities. Okay, so why we need to do data understanding? Why we cannot just jump into our modeling or just prep our data? So we need to do this because we need to have like an informed decision making. Because if you come out with directly go to the model, you need to do your interpretation of your model. Sometimes in order to interpret your model, you need to understand your data, because the interpretation of the model is based on the data that you feed to the model. So how you interpret the model, usually you need to go back and look into the data that you use, what are the representations, what are the distributions, what are the physical meanings. So we need to have like an informed decision making, not just blindly put any data into your model. Of course, you can get the result, but how to explain the result, that is the most important part. Nowadays, machine can do auto modeling, meaning that auto ML, auto machine learning is everywhere. So what are the difference between you as an AI expert with the auto ML? Okay, some people can just use it very easily. There is a tool to do a modeling. But the most important thing is how you explain your model. So that is the difference between you as an AI engineer or machine learning engineer or data scientist with the machines. Now we have all generative AI, right, can help us to do everything, almost everything. But what are the difference between that tools with you? So this is where we need to learn a little bit detail about our data, so later we can see the impact, we can see what are the significance of the data, and then explain to the stakeholder, to the bosses, to the people that really want to know the impact of the uh, data actually. So first, inform decision making. Remember that you need to do your data understanding, because you need to have like an informed decision making. Data understanding allows stakeholder to gain insight into the characteristic, the structure, and the relationship within the data. Okay, so I think in machine learning, you heard about feature selections and everything. So you need to choose your features. So I know there are so many AI method or machine learning method to choose features, but you need to do some explanation why this machine learning algorithm give this list of features. Why these features is very important. So you need to go back to your data understanding in order to answer that questions. Okay. And then secondly, exploratory data analysis. Actually, EDA is just your statistic 101 chapter 1. Okay. Very powerful tools, but sometimes we take it for granted. For me, I think so, because it's a very powerful tool, a very simple statistic. Okay, you do your histogram, you look at the patterns, you do some, uh, draw some graph, draw some bar chart, pie chart, whatever simple chart. You can do it using Excel. Very simple. But sometimes you miss this part and then you jump into the modeling, so you don't really know the data distributions, the impact of the data, what are the maximum, minimum value, whether there is outliers or not. So this part is very important. So you can see the patterns, the trend, and the potential challenges in the data. So this part is very, very important. So remember that when you do your assignment, because we have assignment, right? One of the assignment is very deep into data understanding. So I need you to do very detailed on the data understanding in order to uh, give you some exercise for your final capstone project. And then impact. So this information guides subsequent step in the process, such as data cleaning, pre-processing, modeling. Without a clear understanding of the data, this step might be less effective, leading to suboptimal model. So this is what happens. Sometimes you are too focused on the model, just want to make sure you get the model, you get the, okay, I can run the model, I can see the accuracy. But later when you write your what you want to discuss in detail about the result, so you will miss some part. Okay, because you lack of understanding about the data that you use to construct the model. Okay, so clear this part, informed decision making. Secondly, is about assessment of data quality. So you can see here, Data quality is the most important thing when you do your data science project. Okay, if you don't have a good data, you can imagine that your output will be also not good, right? So the model is just, like a kind of try to understand your data. So if your data is not good, so the model will understand the data that have a very low data quality. So you can imagine that what will be the model look like. So ensuring the quality of data is essential for building accurate and reliable model. Okay. So data understanding involve assessing the completeness, consistency, and accuracy of the data. This include identifying missing value, outliers, and potential error. Okay, so remember that in this part we do our outliers. Okay, we look at whether the data have outliers. For example, we have a data about age, and then we know that for example, driver data. Okay, want to do something related to driving analytics, for example. So we collect some data and then we have driver data. And then one of the variable is, or the features is age. And then you can see inside the data when we do our data understanding, we try to find minimum data, maximum data, and then we can see the minimum data is equal to 3 years. So you can see this data is actually errors or outliers. Okay, normally 3 years kids don't have any license to drive the car. So maybe something wrong with the data collection, whether it's a mistake when they key in the data, they should put 20, but they put 2, something like that. So this is very important to do your data understanding to see about any outliers or any potential error. Same goes to the age, maybe the age 120, for example. So it's a ridiculous age 120 still driving a car. So that's why this is very important. Sometimes it's just you need to just understand the process, and then you can see, you will understand the data very clearly and you can explain in detail later. And then finally, the impact here is by addressing data quality issue early in the process. Data scientists can make informed decision about the data cleaning and pre-processing. So this contribute to the creation of robust model that generalize well to the new unseen data. Okay, so you can see here, we know this one is actually quite familiar with you. You learn machine learning, so you do testing and training. You use data for training, and then you keep another 20% for testing. So that testing data we call new and unseen data. So normally when we develop a model, we want to get a very generalized model, not fall under overfitting model. So that's why when you have a very good data quality, so later you will get a very robust model that generalize, okay, with the unseen data. Okay, so you can see here, first, informed decision making. Second, assessment to the data quality. Third, optimizing resource and utilizations. Okay, efficient use of resources is essential for successful data mining project or data science project. So data understanding help stakeholder identifying most relevant variable, potential predictor and relationship in the data. So this is very important. That's why you can see here, when we look into the data science life cycle, you can see there is an arrow going back, going to from business understanding, and then from data understanding back to business understanding. We need to do this exercise regularly in order to make sure the data that we use is good, and then the data is really represent the problem. So every time we get the data, we have to go back to the subject matter expert, go back to the stakeholder, and then ask again whether this data is good or whether this data is really gives some important representation to the problem itself. So you can see here that one is really important, because later when we go to our model, we will get a very good model, and then we don't need to go back to the process of preparing the data again, because the process is really very good, and then we already cater all the data issue before we put into our model. So how data understanding helps stakeholder identifying the most relevant variables? Okay. And then the impact here, by understanding the data thoroughly, organization can focus their effort on the most promising aspect of data. This optimization of resources lead to more effective and efficient modeling, evaluation, and deployment phases of the scripts DM process. So this is very important, because data collection is really costly. Okay, if you need to collect again the data in order to solve the problem, so you can imagine that it will incur cost to the process. Okay, so in summary, data understanding is a pivotal in the CRIPS TM process, as it enables informed decisions, ensure data quality, and optimize the use of resources. Okay, so these factors collectively contribute to the success of data science project by aligning it with organization goals, improving the reliability of result, and maximizing the efficiency of the overall process. So this is the introduction of data understanding. Okay, any questions so far? Clear or not about data understanding?
Okay, doctor.
Yeah, okay. So we take a break for 2 minutes. Then we continue with all the details about the process in data understanding. Hmm. Okay, so before I go a little bit detail about data understanding, so let me share some case study, some case study or some example about WhatsApp analytics. So because I share with you like last 2 weeks, I think, about one of the project that you can do with data science is about WhatsApp analytics. So give me, I think, around 10 minutes before we go into deeper about data understanding. So at least we look at the case study, and then later you can relate to the process of data understanding. So now you can see my screen. Can you see my
Yes,
screen?
doctor.
Okay. Let me share the screen. Okay, so just have some overview about WhatsApp analytics tool to analyze chat history. So this is a very simple project about analytics, because we know that all of you are using WhatsApp, and then WhatsApp is very powerful. Okay, if you want to do some marketing, or now if you look at world in terms of uh, when we want to have like a campaign, politic campaign, everything, sometimes they use WhatsApp to share all the information, and then from there they can get some insight. Okay, so how they do this, actually you have your own phone. Okay, you have your own WhatsApp group. Maybe you become the admin, so you are the one that become the uh, uh, people in the WhatsApp group. Okay, so here we have, for example, before we go detail, this is not the recent statistic about WhatsApp. I think more than the number is increasingly, because I think during I do this presentation is last 2 years. I think last 2 years. Okay, so the statistic has, I think, more than 2 billion active user worldwide. So WhatsApp is ranked as the most used mobile messenger app in the world. Okay, more than 100 billion messages are sent. So if you look at Domo data, I think they have more than this. The average WhatsApp use and Android spend 38 minutes per day on apps. Okay, so this is about some statistic. That's why when you do any data science project or any AI project, try to get some significant of your project. So this is what we do, significant of the project. Why we want to do this project. So don't just do any project, but make sure you know why you are doing this. So this is social media data that I mentioned to you, last 2 years. Okay, 2021. So you can just check. I think now the statistic is growing. Okay, so if you look at this one, we can see that WhatsApp number 3. I think now maybe I cannot remember. I show you this one, but you can just double check. Digital 2023 Malaysia. Okay, so we can see here WhatsApp is actually number 2. Okay, most used social media platform compared to YouTube. Second is WhatsApp. All right, and the rest. So you can see the potential of WhatsApp analytics. And then the behavior. So here is actually another behavior of the social media, but this is Malaysian data. So this first 2, 3 slide, normally the motivation of doing the project. So in your FYP later on, I just want to remind, so you should have this kind of explanation too. Okay, why you want to do this project, why your project is very important, why you pick up this project. So that one is really good for you to have at the beginning, so you can relate your project with the motivation and the significance. Okay, so you can see here about social media behavior, and then here is about marketing. Okay, so you can see most of they are using share the audience that marketer can be reached. Okay, social media based on gender. So you can see here, normally the young people are looking at social media. So that's why when you want to put any advertisement, everything, so you need to really know a little bit detail about the psychology of young people. So maybe you have different kind of representation of advertisement for them, and then for old people, maybe you can use different medium, something like that. Okay. So look at the WhatsApp analytic tools. So you can have WhatsApp chat analyzer. Okay, you can just search. I think there is a Python code for this project. Okay, it's simple Python project which aim at analyzing various features of a particular WhatsApp chat, such as most active user, most busy time period, and messages per user in the case of group chat. So the tool use Python and all the important package in Python. So WhatsApp Conversation Analyzer is divided into 3 main topics: data collection, data preparation, data explorations. Okay, so but this one, I think it's not until modeling. Don't do any prediction. But if you have enough data, then you can do kind of predictions. So this part is more towards phase one and phase two, phase three, something like that. It's not until modeling. So you can see here, you can just export your chat, okay, to get the data. And then for the data preparations, so you can put into your Python, okay, and then you can just look into detect the date, time, detect the author, extract the combining tokens, and so many, and passing the entire file and handling multi-line messages. Okay, so here related to the text analytic applications. Okay, because although you have date, you have time, you have the author, but normally we want to look into the message. Okay, so we can do some data exploration. So this is actually what we are doing in this phase, what we learned today, data understanding. So in data understanding, we will do our EDA, exploration data analysis. Okay, data explorations. So you can see here, when we do our data exploration, from the data, we can represent it using graph or bar charts. So if you look at the table, sometimes it's not really easy to see the impact of the data. So if you put into a graphical representation, you can see here, Tony Stark have the highest, meaning that highly talkative. When we talk about WhatsApp chatting, right? It's highly talkative. So you can see who is the one who most influence, maybe, or the one that really give their idea. Okay? So we can see this is just using data exploration. So that is the powerful of the data. If you look at the data in the WhatsApp group, you can see like, okay, all the text data. But later when you collect the data, maybe every day, you collect the data for activity for one day, and then you have for maybe 30 days, so you can see the patterns, right? So next, you can see here, we can also draw so many different graphs. This is what we call exploratory data analytics. We explore each of the data, although we just have very small number of features. Here you can see the number of features is just 1, 2, 3, 4, 4 features. Okay, but you can do a lot of graph to represent the insight of the data. Okay, without doing any modeling. So that part is actually just using statistical 101, meaning that your basic statistic, descriptive statistic. Okay, but when we use our Python code, you can draw so many nice graph to represent and to show some insightful informations. So you can see here, this is based on time series, okay, related to time, and then number of message. So you can see what is the highest, why, and so you can see the peak here, and then you can go deeper, okay, to understand why there is a number of messages high during this date. So you can go deeper. What is the problem? Maybe something happened and so on, right? And then this is related to based on the same graph. This is actually using line graph. This is using bar graph. So you can just choose either one. Okay. All right. So this one they are putting into what is the maximum to the minimum. Okay. So you can see here, all right, you have more than 400 messages during this September. And then you can use your text analytic to go deeper, to find for the topic modeling, to find for whatever detail about the message, whether it's a positive, in text analytic, we learn about the whether the message bring positive impact or negative impact and so on. Okay, so down here is another graph, heat map, okay, analyze on Monday from 10 to 10:55. Okay, the WhatsApp group is highly active. Similarly, September. So you can see here, this is the heat map. Same data, you can represent different representation, depends to your audience. depend to the stakeholder. Sometimes the stakeholder want to see detail like this. Then some of them like to see bar graph, and depend on your explanation. Okay, how you explain about your data. What are the main idea that you want to explain to your stakeholder? So that one also very important. You need to know the detail about the graph that you are using. So this part is actually a kind of interesting and very important. Okay, but I don't think so. You learn in deep when you do your machine learning, because this part is actually maybe you can put in statistical and so on. But in statistical, we do a lot of other ANOVA and all the statistical tests, right? But in data science, we will put more detail on this part. So next, we do some analysis. You see here, very huge analysis you can do with data time only. So you just have one data point, there are one variable that can also give a many different perspective of your data. So that is data science. Okay, you should be curious about your data. You should be creative about your data, not just follow whatever people is doing, but be creative. Okay, but be creative, not back up with the data lah. So which was the group most active? So you can see here, you can do kind of detailed explanation. Which day of the week or part of the day and hour of the data has the most number of messages exchanged? Okay, so you can see here, we have how many graph here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we have 5 graph that represent about the date time. Okay, very interesting. And then we can see some insightful informations about the data. Okay, and then author, very interesting. So you can use stack graph, you can use all the detail, and then you can also put like a talkativeness. Okay, you can put like a groups or class the group of author based on the number of message, for example. Okay, and then you can see very interesting mean of the message length also is really gives some insightful information, meaning that this author like to message a very long message, for example. This one very short message. So very interesting to go a little bit deeper in terms of these activities or this data. Who is the most talkative? Whose messages are decreasing with time? Who send long messages? Okay, interesting. So you can see here, we can draw so many interesting graphs based on our data. So what else? Okay, analysis 3. So you can see here from only simple data. This is actually very simple data for 4 variables. So you can do first analysis 1, date time, many graph, and interesting story. Okay, you can tell through the graph. Okay, we have a storytelling in data science. So this is the part that we draw our graph and explain to the stakeholder. Last part, okay, we have emoji also. Okay, third, messages. Okay, so through the messages, we can just draw our word cloud. Super easy to draw this word cloud, right? So you can see, you can just search Python word cloud. So you can so many different algorithm that represent or coding that show the word cloud. So you can see what are the highest or the frequency word being used by each author. Or you want to look into the whole message and so on. Okay. Number 4, emojis. Okay, because in this message also, most of the author like to use emoji, right? So from here, we can see the pie chart that shows about emoji, right? What are the emoji that being used by the author in the groups? Okay, what are the most common used emoji? What is the emoji to message ratio, and so on. Then subject. Okay, what are the most common subject in the group. Okay, so this one also we can represent. You need to do some text analytics. I'm sure that you already took the subject last semester. So you are familiar with this. Dr. Haliza already mentioned to you all the details. So you can just make use of whatever you learn in text analytics and represent in your project, especially if we talk about text. Okay. Number 6, you can see you have how many? Until 6 analysis. Activeness. So from here, you can see number of active author by total number of days. Okay. And then, wait. So many different representations. Okay, whether you want to use bar graph, stack graph. This one is actually like a scattered plot. Okay, compare the relationship between the author with another author and so on. Okay, so you can see down here they use RAP. Okay, there are so many different representations. So you can see, you can do like analysis for each author, but why you choose this author depends on your previous analysis. Okay, interactions. Very interesting. So you can get the interactions with the author. Author 9 interact with author 1 and then go back to sender, author, responder. Okay, so you can see here, this is all the, so you can get the WhatsApp analyzer from GitHub if you want to go through. Okay, it's a very interesting case study. And then I think everybody know you are the one who use WhatsApp, so you can see this very clearly. Sentiment, interesting. You can do until sentiment, whether the message have positive sentiment, negative sentiment, or like a what we call that, not belong to others. Okay, so this one they just have 2 statement. Sometimes they put 3. Okay, so you can see who is the author that really look at negative. Most of the people in the WhatsApp group, you can see whether this author or these people is very negative. This one is very positive and blah, blah, blah. So many interesting output that you can see from the WhatsApp itself. Okay, so you can see here, you can do 8 analysis, and altogether the first one is just using basic statistic. Second, basic statistic. This one you need to use some text in order to analyze the frequency. And then this one also you can just use simple statistic. Subject, you need to use text analytics. Activeness, simple statistic. This interaction also just use simple statistic. And then this one need to use text analytics. Done. Okay, any questions? Is it okay? You can see clearly? I think some
Yes, Doctor.
Hatta, are you here? Okay, good. I can see some hands. Okay, hopefully you can relate the case study with your activity later on, with your own project. So this is what we mean by doing your project, FYP, and later your capstone should be much bigger because you're in group. FYP is individual, right? So you can see the significance of your project, the impact, how you make use of your AI tools, how you make use your machine learning, your statistic. Okay, the most important thing, how you blend it together and then come up with the solutions. Okay, data solution, AI solution. Okay, whatever AI method, normally it based on data. So normally you are doing some kind of data science project also when you deal with some AI, but it depends. Maybe some of the AI project is already well established and then they already have the data clean and so on. So you just have to pre-train sometime. So maybe that one is not really huge on data prep. So, but you need to just retrain your model. But again, understanding the data is very important. Okay, so we start with our lecture. Can I continue? with our lecture?
Yes.
Can,
Sure, doctor.
All right. So are you still interested to listen to me for
Yes,
my?
doctor.
Okay, good. Hopefully, all of you is really energetic to know more detail for this, because it's very interesting. For me, I feel very interesting, because then you know what are the important steps that you need to take in order to come up with a very good project. Okay, wait, I have many DA. Describe. Okay, I want to use this because I have so many, not many lah. I have several slide related to data understanding. So I think I want to use this one. This one is more complex because you are AI students. So you should know some of this part. Okay. Okay. Data understandings. I will just focus on data understanding. Okay. Not data preparation. I want you to give me at least 2 weeks for data understanding. Then we move to the data preps. But before you have data understanding, you need to collect all your data. So before you do this, you need to know your data source. But let me explain about data understanding first. Then we look into the source of data, because I think for source of data, you already learn different AI method, so you know different AI method have different type of data. So I think you learn in detail when you take, for example, machine learning. So you're familiar with data that suitable for machine learning, computer vision, image processing. So you know about the data in image processing. You learn Evo, so you know about the data for Evo, fuzzy, same also to fuzzy. You learn your clustering, so you know the data, what the data look like. So later I will give some simple overview about data, and then data understanding, that the part that you don't really learn in detail in most of the subject. Okay, so time to time, if you have any question, feel free to unmute and then ask. I really like to have like a discussions, brainstorming, for this topic. Very interesting. So you can just ask me any question throughout the session. Don't wait until at the end. Sometimes you forgot. So if you have any question, you can just unmute, say, excuse me, I have question. So it's easy like that. Okay. So data explorations. Okay. Preliminary exploration of data is to be better understanding its characteristic. Okay, to find the insight of data. So what is the roadmap here? Organize the data set, find the central point, understand the spread, visualize, group and aggregate, watch out for outliers, understanding the relationships, visualize the relationship, visualize high dimensional data. So this is all the process that we do in data exploration. So this is get back to our CRIPS DM. So we know this is in phase 2, data understanding. We are moving from business understanding to data understanding. So in data understanding, we have our 4 tasks, important tasks. Okay, first, collect initial data, describe the data, explore data, and then verify data quality. So each of these tasks, they have their own outputs. Of course, when we talk about collect initial data, we have the data report. We have all the data sources, the data file, and so on. Describe the data, so we need to do the data descriptions. You have our information for each variables and so on. Explorations, so you do some exploratory data analytics, okay, to understand better about the data, to understand each of the variables in the data, and then to know the relationships between the variables. And then finally look for the data quality, right? Whether there is a outliers for this particular data, whether the data have missing value or not. So this is the part that important for you to do, and then the output or the deliverables. Okay, so familiar with this, right? You learn this in Dr. Chu class, machine learning, iris flower dataset. So for this one, you know that this iris is about what actually? Okay, about a flower. Orchid lah, sometimes like orchid. Okay. And then what they have here in the data set is actually they take the measurements for the sepal length, sepal width, petal length, petal width. So I see this is also being used by Dr. Chu, so easy for you to relate with what I'm going to explain later on. So when you do in your machine learning, you need to predict the iris flower breed, meaning that whether this iris is belong to Setosa, versicolor or virginica. Okay, so we must first learn the concept of iris flower. Okay, so that's why before you put this data into your model, you need to know about what is actually the data is all about. What is iris flower? So this is the part that we try to understand the data. Okay, so when we know about our data, then we know, oh, actually this one is about the length. So this is the width, and then this is actually about the flower only. It's not really together with the other details of the flower. So it's just collect the measurement of the flower, and then from this measurement, they can put it into their own breed. So you know your data. So you understand the data very details. Not just, okay, I'm collect the data, then I just put into the model, then I can get the class. We have 3 group, for example. So not like that. So you need to understand. So first task is actually collect initial data. So the most critical issue in any data science or modeling project is finding the right data. Is it correct? Who agree with me? Finding the right data. Yes. Right. So it's not easy. Yeah, Omar, you want to talk something to me? It's not easy, right? To get a right data. Okay. So now you are doing your FYP. So this part is very crucial. So try to find a good data, because if you do AI project, you also need some data. If you use data science, of course, you need a lot of data. So you can see their common data source would be companies and proprietary data sources, government data sources, academic data set, equity and equity. So this is some of the common data set. Okay. For example, company data sources like large company like Facebook, Google, Amazon, American Express, Blue, and many other big company have amazing amount of exciting data about users and transaction, data which could be used to improve how the world works. So that's why they give you free access to their emails, to use their email, to use their photo, right? Google, right? You get Google Photo, email, Google Drive. They give you access to use their tools, but they get your data. That is the, I don't know, win-win situation, but actually they are selling the data to a third party. Of course, they will include in terms of the data security or privacy data, but they just use a generic data. For example, image. So you put everything in Google Photo. Before this, they give unlimited, right, for Google Photo. But now they limit the number because they have enough data for their project. Okay, so they limit, but they can use your photo for generalized, for modeling and so on. So that is the part. And then later they will sell again the data. Same goes to open power, meaning that ChatGPT. Okay, they collect all the data and then later they will sell back. Especially the one that subscribe ChatGPT 4, right? It's quite powerful. Then you need to subscribe every month. I think nearly 90 ringgit or hundreds. So you need to pay for the subscription. So you can imagine how many people in the world subscribe. So they make really big money from there. So that is data source. Data is really oil right now. So the problem is getting outside access is unusually impossible. Companies are reluctant to share data for two good reasons: business issue and the fear of helping their competitions. Okay, privacy issue and the fear of attending their customers. So this is very important. So if you work with some company that really deal with data from another, company, so make sure you are really look into the data ethics and so on, right? Because this is very important. So that's why when we deal with data in the company, so you need to work in detail with them, and then sometimes they don't want the data being leaked outside. So remember about that. Don't just easily share any data that you use. Make sure you know the any privacy issue or not that at the data. So make sure you particular on that part. So for government data for Malaysia, we can just go to data.gov.my. You can get most of the data, but the data here I can see that is aggregated data. But right now in DOSM, I think the data is much good. Is good compared to previously. Wait, DOSM open data. Okay. Right. So I go through this website before.
Yes, doctor.
This one is actually data. You can have so many different data here. If you want to do, you can select on. You can see all the detail. They do some visualizations, but you also can get the data. I think. Okay, you can just ask for API to get the data. So it's good. Malaysia also starting to grow in terms of their data, open data initiative. Because before this, we cannot see clearly the data. It's just aggregated data. But now we can see the details. Okay, in terms of the table, they have like a detail and very nice visualization. So it's good right now compared to the last year. Okay, so you can get like a full data set. It's from CSV file. Okay, so and also they also have some Python code that you can use. So it's good right now. We are moving quite fast, I think, because I always look at Open Data Singapore. So quite similar right now. I'm happy. Okay, wait. Bank account. Okay, so this one, repository. Okay. So they also have like a real-time API, pollutant, geospatial data, interesting dengue cluster. Okay, very nice. So Malaysian also is going towards you can download the data. So easily, meaning that is a free data for you to use or to maybe you want to do some study scanning that. Okay, get back to here. So this is for government source, okay, data sources. So you can just go through back. And then we also have academic data set. Okay, so academic data set, normally you can search from Kaggle, okay, This is cell image. This is all related to the image. And then we also have UCI data. We have Kaggle. We have world data. So this is very good data to website to look into the data. At least if we look into academic data set, they have some info regarding the data and what we can do with the data. Sometimes they share the model, they share the how they process the data. Is really good, especially for those who are not familiar with the steps in data science activity. Okay, so this is another interesting source of data. Okay, sometimes you will have to work for your data instead of just taking it from others. Okay, much historical data still exists only in books or in other paper document, so does require manual entry and curations. On the other way to get data from web pages is scraping. Okay, so this is also another thing. We cannot get the data in the kind of the table form. Sometimes we need to scrap the data through the web page, for example, or we do some archiving from the historical books or historical magazine. So we need to do like a manual entry. So still we need to do something, but later we can get the data. So data scraping is commonly manifest the web scraping, the process of using an application and extract valuable information from a website. So there is a Python package to do this. I think the package called Beautiful Soup. So you can just use this to scrap many data from the web. But there is a tips to do that because some of the website they don't really give people to scrap their data, but yeah, you need to do some tweak in order to make sure you get the data. All right. So clear on that part? So we have so many
Yes,
different data
doctor.
sources. So you just don't just imagine that you don't have data, but you need to do your data, your business understanding first in order to have a good, clear motivation about your project. Then you know about your data. Okay. So now we move to the next part. When we talk about data, we have our raw data, we have our process data. Okay. So normally, in our capstone project, I want you to try to get a raw data. Okay, raw data, meaning that come from the original sources. Try your best. Later lah for your capstone, but for your FYP and for other project, it's okay to get a process. Sometimes you get just the data is ready for you. Okay. So raw data is actually the original source of data, often hard to use for data analysis. So this is the keyword here. Okay, not just a very clean data and then you can just draw your graph easily. Sometimes you need to make sure your data is very dirty, very messy. That is the key point for our first assignment. So data analysis include processing. Okay, raw data may only need to be processed once. So normally this part you don't really learn in detail when you take each of the courses, for example, machine learning, Evo, and so on, because most of the data is ready. It's a processed data, or maybe the data is quite clean. Okay, so you just have to look into the outliers and something like that. But when you have a very raw data, sometimes the data is not in the table form. So you need to have like a code in order to make sure your data in the table form, something like that. Okay. So compared to the processed data that is ready for analysis. So when you get your data from Kaggle, for example, from UCI, so that data is actually processed data. It's already ready for you to do the analysis. Okay. So if you don't have the access to the raw data, what you can do in order to look into your data become very messy, meaning that you have different sources of data. And that one is also very interesting. Meaning that if you have a very different sources of the data, so you need to process your data, how you do the data merging, subsetting, transforming, and so on. That part is quite crucial. This part is actually fall under data prep. Okay, how you prep your data. So in order to do this, you need to look into the standards. Okay, make sure they can be merged, they can be append, or they can be a part of your data. Right? So all steps should be recorded. So make sure everything that you do for your data preparations, you need to record, because later when you done your process, your data is ready, sometimes you need to relook again. So if you don't record the process, later you will get maybe different set of data, not similar like the previous one, because maybe some part, maybe you do some transformation, or you do some feature selections. Okay, you need to record it. Okay, done. Any questions so far for that until now? Is it clear?
No, doctor.
Okay.
Yes,
All right.
clear.
Good. Thank you. So now we look into types of data. So I think this one is quite direct, because you can see here we have type of data, quantitative, okay, and also qualitative. Categorical is a quality of the data. Quantitative is numbers or continuous numbers, or maybe discrete. So you can see here quantitative can be represented by discrete or continuous. Okay. So here in discrete, meaning that the measurement such as height, weight, or amount. So discrete is just, for example, it's not continuous. Okay, continuous sometimes you can represent by real number or ratio. Okay, so ratio data to numeric scale. So there is a scale if you want to put into your ratio into a numeric scale. So this one is very important, because when you have your data in a categorical form, sometimes your model cannot read directly. So you need to represent your data into a continuous. Okay, in some cases, sometimes you can just use directly categorical data. So categorical data, normally the data that describes some characteristic or category. Okay, nominal and also categorical. Right. Okay, so you can see here qualitative and quantitative. So qualitative is quite straightforward. It's a nominal or ordinal data or categorical data. For quantitative, discrete data or continuous data. So discrete data such as how many kids you have, how many workers, how many laptops. Continuous, we have like a float or doubles, point values. Okay. So here, in order to do your EDA, we just use descriptive statistics. So all of you already take your statistic subject. So statistic subject, chapter 1. Chapter 1 is what we are doing in EDA. Very powerful. Only use chapter 1. Okay, but you can do a lot of descriptive statistic with your data. Okay, you already look at the example given by the WhatsApp analytics, so you can see that is the powerful of descriptive statistic. Okay, a study of aggregate quantities such as mean, standard deviations, of distribution, quantification, and the main characteristic of the dataset. In general, descriptive analysis cover the following characteristic of the sample or population dataset. Okay, this one is just using mean, median, mode. Then we have range, variance, standard deviation. We have symmetry, squeakness, and kurtosis. Okay, so this is what we are getting when we do our descriptive statistic. Okay, so if you have one variables, meaning that you want to look into each of the variable in the data set, you can just use measure of central tendency. This is actually very powerful, but the calculation is quite simple. Just find mean, median, mode. The measure of separate is actually standard deviations. Okay, so you can see here it's very simple statistic but powerful representation, powerful interpretation of the data. Okay, for multivariate, meaning that when you have more than two variables, so you can just look into the correlations. Okay, just draw some scattered plot, whether you can see some relations between the data. And then we can also use all the data visualizations, for example, histogram, quartile, distribution chart, okay, bubble chart, scattered plot, and so many different charts that you can use to do the data visualization to understand each of your data. Okay, we have density plot, Farrell chart, deviation chart, and many more. Okay, so clear on that part for data understanding? Any questions?
No, Doctor.
Okay, so later during the tutorial session, we will do this data understanding in Python step by step. Okay, but before that, okay. All right. So now we will go a little bit deeper. Is it okay? You need some rest or not? Can I move to the next more deeper? Okay, more deeper. The first slide is actually just like an introductory of data understanding, why it's important. And then we continue with the example of the case study, WhatsApp analytics. So you can see most of the analytics in WhatsApp is using data understanding. Because the data is quite simple, so do a lot of data understanding and then use visualization to show about the data, and then from there we also still can get some insightful information. And then on the third slide is actually a little bit deeper about the data understanding that shows that we have 4 tasks and also 4 outputs. Okay, start with the initial data, and then we will do our data explorations. We look into the data quality, and also finally we need to come up with the report for that activity and process. And then now we go a little bit deeper about data messaging. Data meaning that if you want to do your data understandings, so you need to go a little bit deeper. Okay. So again, I need to remind it takes 60 to 80% of the time to do data wrangling or data preparations. So this is a kind of 7 important process. Okay. First, you can understand about the columns, or column here we call it variables. Okay, you need to know each of your variables. And then if the variable is not really important, you can drop the variables. Or for example, in terms of the row, if the row have so many null value, so you can also remove. And then for noise is actually related to the outliers. If you have any outliers, you can just remove, or you can impute the values. Okay, missing value, so you can do some impute. This is actually the part that you do in data quality, so to check in terms of the data quality. Some cases you need to transform your data from non-numeric to numeric. Okay, if you use your tools in machine learning, sometimes they do it automatically, but you need to know why it like that, because they change the representation of the data. Later, if you want to explain, sometimes you need to know the values. Then we do features engineering. And then finally, maybe we need to use a dimensionality reductions. Okay, so I give you one example of the data. So are you familiar with Titanic data set? You used this before?
No.
No, okay, good. Maybe just check in my Google Collapse whether I have it or not. Wait, Google Collapse. Oh, this one. Okay, it's okay. Later I will check. I will do it together in the tutorial sessions. So maybe I just go through for you to at least know the expectation later. So get back to the slide. So first, drop unnecessary columns. So you know you have so many columns. So you need to look into detail which column you can just drop easily. For example, ID, names. This is not really unique. There is a unique representation for this one, and then it's not really have some important or any patterns if you use this kind of data. So you can just drop the columns. Okay. And then drop the column with contain a lot of null or missing value. Again, in some cases, you have around 70% of the missing value. So you just should drop. That's why when we do our data understanding, we will try to look into our missing value and how many percent. If more than 75%, so it's no point because so many missing value. So we don't have enough information. So maybe we can drop the data. Okay. And then drop the column which have a very low variance. Okay, when you have a very low variance, meaning that your data is actually similar to each other. Okay, you can drop a variable with low or zero or low variance because the variable with low variance will not affect the target variable. If all the value in the variable are approximately the same, then you can easily drop this variable. Okay, so that's why when you learn about what is actually variance. Okay, variance is actually the dispersions of your data. If your data is similar to each other, for example, the value is just 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, same value. So it doesn't have any patterns. The value is just the same. So how to see whether your data is actually have similar value in each of the line. So you can use variance. So that is a very powerful statistical representations. Okay, because in some cases when you have a very huge data, for example, how many rows you have, more than 10,000 rows, sometimes it's not easy for you to look one by one to see whether your data have some similarity. So we need to use some basic statistic to represent the distributions of the data. So variance is a good representation to show that the data is almost similar, so you can drop because the value of the variance is 0 or very low, 0.000 something. So meaning that the data is quite similar. The dispersion of the data is very small. Okay? Because if you find the mean also equal, if you find the dispersion also is very small. So that's why the variance become very small. Okay, for example, if most of the value in the numerical variables contain 1, then you can drop this variable. Okay, so how you do this? By looking at the variance. Remove row containing null value. So if there is 10 to 15 observation which contain null value, you can consider to remove, meaning that your data is not complete, so better remove. If you cannot remove, so you need to do imputation. So that is another way how you can represent your missing data. Okay, so next, remove noise. Okay, what is noise? Noise is a data is meaningless, distorted, and corrupted. How you know your data is meaningless, distorted, and corrupted? Okay, this one you can use basic statistic. You look at the box plot. So normally we use box plot representations. So from here we can see the outliers. And then we also see about the skewed value in the data set. So you can draw your histogram and then you can see whether your data skewed to the left or skewed to the right. And then you can see the dispersions of the data. So from here you can see whether your data have a noise data or not, right? So we need to remove this noise before supplying the data to the algorithm or to the model. Okay, but before you remove, domain knowledge play an important role, meaning that your stakeholder that really know about the data, your subject matter expert, should guide you whether this is real a noisy data or this is actually fall under the data that you need to look into detail. For example, you are doing anomaly detections. When we do anomaly detections, normally the data is not many and it become very different from the other data. Okay, so in the case of anomaly detections, sometimes the outliers is very important because from there we know this is anomaly. There is an anomaly in the process. So depend to your problem. That's why I need to put this one. Domain knowledge play an important role. Okay, you need to go back to the subject matter expert, to the domain knowledge. Okay, the one that really know about the data and then try to explain again whether this data is really outliers or the data is really important to look into detail. Okay, and then we also can replace the values. Okay, for example, I don't know, you are familiar with PIMA Indian PIMA Indian diabetes data set? Do you use this data in your machine learning? No? PIMA? No, right?
No, Roti. No.
Okay, so it's a very interesting data to look into missing value because this data have so many missing value. Okay, there are 0 value for blood pressure, glucose, because this is data about diabetes patients, insulin. So because the data, I think not more than 1,000. So the data is really important data because data about patients. And then we cannot just ignore the data. We just cannot delete the data, but we need to do some replacement. How to do this? We can use statistical or machine learning. So there is a way how to replace the data. Okay, sometimes we impute the data. So we need people to replace this value with some meaningful value. Sometimes we predict the value by using mean, the average, and so on. Okay, but you need to, again, work together with the subject matter expert, especially for this kind of data. We need to work together with the physicians, okay, the doctors, whether the value that we impute, we replace is correct or not. All right, it's suitable with the other value from this because the data for patient normally is very expensive. Okay, maybe there is something wrong, or when we talk about human that collect the data, miss some of the cell of the data. So we need to replace, but we need to work with the domain knowledge. Outliers. So it's very important to remove outliers from the data set. Okay, and then so later I will share with you later you can see how we can remove the outliers. Here is very interesting link that explain about this. And then we also can use some log transform. I don't know you use this before in your machine learning class, because some of the data sometimes you cannot just directly use the value. You need to do some transformations. Okay, normally we do log transform lah. That is the popular one. So that's why in calculus you learn log, you learn exponential, because log and exponential is a very important functions that can represent the data in a very meaningful representations. Okay, then it's good to put into the model. So this is about impute missing value. So you can impute whether numeric value or categorical. For numeric, we use mean, median, or mode, simple statistic. For categorical, we can impute missing value to introduce a new category, or we can just use a frequent category to replace with the category that is missing. But again, this one is, you need to be very careful, because you are not changing lah, actually you introduce new data to the original data. So do it very carefully, and then you need to work together with the subject matter expert. So transformation, so there are so many different ways to do transformations. This is another way, from categorical to the variable to the dummy variable. You can use one hot encoder, and I think you use this a lot, but you don't notice, because especially when you use for decision tree model, sometimes you need to convert it into representations of category to the numeric value. So normally we use one hot encoder algorithm to transform the data. And then date. Okay, we have only date. Sometimes we can transform it into numeric variables. So if you look at the example before, we use WhatsApp analytics. So we have the date. So from the date, we can represent many visualization. So meaning that we need to transform the date into different variables. Then from there, we can do a lot of representation or graph based on the date only. And then features engineering. Are you familiar with the word features engineering?
Yes.
I think you learn this a lot in machine learning, but I don't know whether you tried before or you implement it in detail, because features very important. Later when I explain about machine learning, you will know why these features is very important, because in some cases your data, you cannot just directly use your data put into your model. You need to transform the data into features. Then from features, you put into your model. In some cases, you need to do your features engineering, meaning that represent it into a different representation that easily can understand by the models. Then dimensionality reductions. You have so many data, you have so many variables, huge data set. So sometimes you need to reduce the dimension of your data. Either you are using feature selections, or you can also use dimensionality reduction using PCA, LDA, SBD, MDSD, and so many different methods for dimensionality reductions. Most of this method is actually fall under statistical methods, but it's very popular in machine learning, because for machine learning algorithm, there is a limitation for machine learning algorithm. Normally, we don't want to use all of the data set. Sometimes your algorithm cannot understand well when you use so many data. And then sometimes the data may be not very important, but you include, so you will try to give like a garbage into your model. So this is very important. Try to use your feature selections, then you can implement to the models, or you can use dimensionality reductions. So this is the process overview. So later in our tutorial session, I will explain in detail the process together with the, what we call this, example. Okay, so this one we will do some example. We will try to use real data. This case, I have several example. This one, I think, data about used car. Used car is interesting. Whether we use data used car or data Titanic. Maybe I use used car price car detail. So we can do a lot of activities. We will do detail step 1 until we use for EDA. And then all the details. But this one is not really the step. We will do in Google Colab. Later, I will explain to you in Google Colab. This one. So get ready your tools. Okay, so we will do in detail later about this one by one. We will do our basic statistic and then we will look into detail. This one is what? This is Titanic, I think. Yeah, this is Titanic data. So later I will show you different kind. This is what we are doing in exploratory data analytics. Okay, we try to explore each of the variables, okay, one by one. Then we can get some insightful informations. So any questions so far? Is it clear about data understanding?
No, Doctor.
Okay.
Yes,
All
Doctor.
right. Okay, good. So maybe we can end our session. So hopefully this afternoon you have a lot of questions to ask regarding this process. If you do it for your own data, for your FYP, also good. If you have any question about that, so I'm happy to answer. But make sure it's related to the data understanding. So at least we can get the same understanding about what is the important activity in this stage. Okay, in this phase 2. Alright, so I will end my lecture. So just remind you, we meet again afterwards around, can we make it around 2:15? Can I?
Okay, Doctor.
Okay, so I don't know, for the second group, if you can join together with the first group, much better because it's just online. But let me know if you have any problems to join together. Okay. And every time I have an online session, I will record the session and then I will share it in our ULearn later on. Okay. So see you this afternoon around 2:15 to do the data exploration, meaning that data understanding using Python. Okay. Bye. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you,
Thank you, Doctor.
Doctor.
Thank you, Doctor.
Welcome.
You,
Thank you, Doctor.